they ended up 3xing their sales, not just their online sales, but their actual sales all across the board because they had consistency of customer experience. If you're where your customer is and they know what to expect from you and you're providing that thing, because if you go into a website or an Instagram account and it's, no offense against the customer, but it's pretty garbage content, you're expecting a pretty garbage product. They up their content game for very, very cheap. It doesn't take much to figure out how to do that.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. Retaining customers is easier and cheaper than acquiring customers. But unless you continuously acquire, you might have growth challenges. You can't simply rely on word of mouth channels. Customer acquisition is especially critical for e-commerce. For your customer acquisition to work effectively, you need to master your ideal customer profile and the messaging that will work with them. You also need to master strategies that are going to be uniquely applicable to your customers and channels. Finally, you'll need to figure out how to continuously measure and keep improving until you hit the desired KPIs for your funnel. In today's episode, we invited a panel of cross-functional experts for a live interview on LinkedIn who brings significant expertise to discuss customer acquisition strategies for e-commerce. We covered many grounds in this episode, including the process and steps of customer acquisition and stories related to customer acquisition strategies. Finally, we covered how to improve customer acquisition metrics by having a deeper understanding of customer needs and refining the targeting strategies. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hello everyone, welcome to today's show. For today, we are going to be discussing customer acquisition. So we are going to start with everybody's intros. Ben, I'm actually going to start with your intro if you don't mind.
No, not at all. Thanks, Sam. Excited to be here. I'm always a fan of customer acquisition and being on these panels. We were just chatting about it in the green room. I think I gain as much from hearing everyone else and their insights as hopefully I'm able to give back. So my name is Ben Searcy. I am one of the co-founders of Govee. We are a mass customer mobilization platform designed around getting customer acquisition, increasing retention, and customer insights.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Ben. Chris, I'm actually going to move to you for your intro if you don't mind.
Sure. Thank you, Sam. Hello, everyone. This is Chris Harrington, President and COO of Gen Alpha Technologies. And we help equipment manufacturers sell parts online. In a nutshell, that's really what we do. Certainly, customer acquisition is very different in our world and in the B2B space. So hopefully I'll be learning from everybody else on the more D2C type things and then sharing some stories on the B2B side.
Okay, thank you so much for being here, Chris. Kira, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I'm Kira from Customerization. What we do, we implement Zoho and Microsoft Dynamics systems, but I personally have rich marketing background, so I'm here to connect between marketing and sales via technology.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Kira. Steve, can I move to you next for your intro?
Yes, thank you, and thanks for having me on the show. Honored to be here with these great folks. My name is Steve Rice. I'm from .com Jungle, and in our consulting capacity, we actually help sales directors and marketing directors think about these things. And with .com Jungle, we actually provide technology support in order to help them make and implement wise decisions related to their marketing and sales efforts.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Steve. Dave, can I move to your intro next?
Of course, Dave Meyer, founder and president of BusyWeb. We're based in Minneapolis, and we are a growth marketing agency for manufacturing and B2B services businesses. So we actually help drive traffic and then help convert those customers so that you can get new customers. And that's why I'm super excited to be talking about customer acquisition today. Thanks, Sam.
Okay, love it. This is going to be so fascinating. So we are going to dig right into the topic. First, we are going to define the process and the steps in the customer acquisition process. And now, when we talk about different industry verticals, different industries, when we compare the customer acquisition in the B2B and B2C space, and there are going to be some interesting mix there, B2B to C as well, and maybe DTC. Okay, so for all of those, the customer acquisition process is going to differ. So Ben, I am going to start with you. If you have any sort of stories that you might be able to share in describing the process and steps, maybe start with that, or just describe how it is going to differ in different industries.
Sure. Happy to jump into it. I mean, at a high level, I like to have just a quick establishing the right dynamic element here. Very first step is defining who your customers are. Before you do anything else, which will then dictate what your channels are, and then you build your strategy around that. So from my opinion, at least, regardless of what industry, what vertical, anything else, you need to know those two things before you can make any plans around that. So if you're looking at trying to, if you're trying to drive a referral traffic, that's a common factor. A lot of people I work with, they do referral-based customer acquisition because a study came out in Adweek a couple of years ago. 95% of people look at friends and family as one of the highest and most trusted sources of decision making for purchase behavior. Now, that doesn't necessarily work if you're selling, machine tools. There's not that many friends and family members like, I better call my cousin, see if I can buy $1 million product. But in terms of the B2C and the D2C space, that is an incredible way of getting in front of people. But again, defining your customer, and I'm sure we'll circle back around to this. So the more like granular takeaways, I'm sure everyone has some ideas on it. I don't want to go too far down that just yet. But another thing I've studied recently is what they call the bow tie funnel. And I wanted to address that today because I think it's really important. A lot of people are familiar with the sales funnel being, your typical, kitchen funnel style thing, all the way from awareness to conversion. But a bow tie funnel puts that on its side and it has the awareness conversion all the way to the narrow point on a conversion. If you imagine an hourglass on its side, and then it opens up on the back end. And that's where a lot of the referral opportunities come from. That is where creating more content using your current customer base, such as recommendations and testimonials, case studies, and all that. So you take your current customer base and you use them to expand further into both increased purchases on their end, but we're also talking about customer acquisition. So how do you get those people to help you with your customer acquisition? And it's not necessarily like, okay, Chris has bought from me, now Chris is going to drive all of my future customer acquisition. That would be amazing. And that's where you get away with, referral programs, you do affiliate marketing and all that kind of stuff. But content that I can create with Chris is really important. Chris's word of mouth is really important. Case studies Chris can create. And that leads me to the last thing I want to mention before giving everyone else a chance, so I don't touch on everything they were going to say. Content. In terms of like a specific actual actionable takeaway, get your people talking, your current customers talking about you, and create content. Video content is king right now, but high quality, useful, actionable content, hopefully much like we're doing today, where people can actually pay attention to this content and learn something, change something in their business, and get a win from it. That content is going to drive you more customers than anything else you're going to do.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for that, Ben. So Chris, I'm actually going to move to you for your story, how you would define the process and the steps in different industries.
Sure. Well, I will. I'd love to comment on the friends and family example that Ben used because I think it's really interesting. Certainly, friends and family is very powerful when it comes to direct marketing and retail type environments and of course others as well. But, I've seen $1 million purchases where companies are relying on their network. So if somebody else has made a purchase, right, it's a very large dollar purchase, they are certainly looking at their network. And while they might not be their family, they are certainly the friends, right? And they are seeking their advice because that's typically a CapEx type spend, and they want to know the process that somebody else might have gone through and so on. So those influencers and those networked friends can be very powerful in acquiring new customers for sure. I think certainly identifying your customers and the verticals that they play in, and then messaging where developing the right messages for where those different people are going to be. I think in addition to, identifying the vertical that is going to have the greatest return for you is a great way to narrow down where you need to have the right message and which platforms you need to have your messaging on. So if you're choosing to, try to acquire new customers from Amazon, is that a channel that you're going to because you think for that vertical they might be on Amazon? Is it through Google? Is it YouTube? If you're using educational content because you're trying to deliver some value to get new customers, YouTube might be a better channel because video is king. So you want to be giving them some educational video to bring them in. I think a couple things that I would just add to what we've said here already is that a great place to find a resource for how you can acquire new customers is asking recent customers who have acquired something from you. So those that have recently purchased from you, where did they find you? Why did they purchase from you? Those can be a great resource for you because they just made that purchasing decision or whatever type of value you wanted them to come and achieve with you. So identifying your goal is really important as well.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Chris. So, Kira, I'm actually going to move to you for your story and how you would describe the process and steps for different industries as far as the customer acquisition goes.
Yeah, sure. Gosh, I wish I could share screen because the folks are talking that's exactly what I want to say, and I have it visualized. So basically, I think the process is more or less the same, and guys, that I like to simplify. So I will just summarize. First is really know your ideal customer profile, who those people that are buying from you, who will stay with you, who will refer. And Chris is right. Ask your, not only sales, not only your data, but actually your customers. And if you think some other segment would fit your goals, then go and just make your research and talk to those people, to your ideal customers that are yet not with you, and see whether that's a fit. That's step number one. Know your customer. Then tailor the messaging for each customer profile because, probably those who buy parts are quite different from those who buy parts for business because they fix other stuff, or those who buy parts because they're, do-it-yourself homeowners and do that over the weekend. So that's quite different. That's step number two. Define the messaging for each category of your customers. Number three is, of course, what you guys said is where that content will be distributed. Are they on LinkedIn? Guys who buy parts are probably not on LinkedIn. They are probably on Facebook. So let's do that. And you would need some ads. So, you need to be crisp and sharp. And the last thing is obviously measure, refine, repeat. Those are the 4 steps. Know your customers, define the messaging per customer segment, find the right content distribution channels, capture, measure, evaluate, refine.
Okay, amazing. Love the steps. Steve, I'm actually going to move to you for your story and how you would define the process and steps as far as customer acquisition goes.
Well, I think one of the questions you've been asking is sort of the differentiation between different business types and different customer types. Yep. And, we live in a world that's really fun right now when it comes to marketing and sales, because 30 years ago, we didn't have all these other channels. And one of the obvious things I think would be if you're a manufacturer, you might not have a direct consumer channel, and your sales funnel and or what you're trying to accomplish in customer acquisition might have a lot to do with sort of buying leads. A lot of manufacturers aren't sophisticated enough right now to actually have a marketing department that can actually generate leads on their website, which is where most of the people on this panel come into play. But they do have usually a phenomenal sales teams. You can have a business that's $1 billion that doesn't have a marketing team if you have a really good sales team, but it's a different type of job. But if you have a good marketing team that can actually create content, generate leads on the web, then you have a different customer acquisition strategy, and it's just another piston in the engine for the sales guys and gals. So opposed to direct to consumer, which has its own fun because you get to, say you make sleeping bags, you get to go buy a sleeping bag keyword and see how you can do. And there's a lot more opportunities in terms of channels around there. And I would just support everybody here who's basically saying you need to identify your customer, know where they hang out, and find them there. And then you really need to measure. And I'm a big fan of measuring in cohorts and trying to identify lifetime value. And the more you work in sort of the direct consumer world for a model in which consumers actually do repeat business, then that lifetime value is super important because the 80-20 rule applies. 80% of your business is going to come from 20% of your customers. And you need to bring in more customers to get that 20% to be bigger, right? So that's sort of how I look at it. I hope that's helpful.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Steve. And before I move to Dave, we are going to be discussing these stories related to strategy. So keep your stories ready, and I'm going to come back to Ben. But before that, Dave, this is going to be your sweet spot.
Yes.
So customer acquisition for different industries, how it differs. Do you want to define the process and steps?
Sure. So I think as part of everything that we've talked through so far, whether it's the bow tie funnel, and I love that analogy, Ben, as we move in and kind of pressing in and trying to figure out how we're engaging on two levels versus just dumping in one big funnel and then popping out the bottom. And Kira already touched on ideal customer profiles. It's incredibly important for us to know who our best customer is if we're going to develop content and helpful information for those folks. So it's important, and one of the things that we haven't covered yet that I want to go into is probably what the buyer's journey is for that person once we know who they are, right? So that's usually awareness, where people understand that I have an issue or I have a defined need, and then consideration once they've found you and they're deciding versus you versus all of your competition, and then the decision and how do you streamline that process. This is where it gets really fun in e-commerce because we can look at actually getting clicks and calls to action and things to actually help enhance that online, right? And so as we're looking at e-commerce, specifically when people are trying to buy, we want to remove as many roadblocks to the next step as possible. So as I look at this, we're trying to identify every possible way that we're going to get new traffic, new customers, and maintain those customers. And so as we map all of that out, we want to start then building a plan across the entire buyer's journey and coming up with ways to measurement focused, like Steve said, to get easy touch points where we know if our job is working or our marketing and our sales efforts are working. And then if they're not, to be able to come up with an alternative and not wait for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, or for most e-commerce, a couple of hours before we're changing and adjusting so that we're maximizing our results. So wrapping all that up, I think the one thing that I want to take forward in the conversation is from my perspective is looking at that buyer's journey and where are the decision points. And when we get into the next section, when we are giving examples, that's where I'm going to kind of lean in.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Dave. So, Ben, I'm actually going to move to you for the story that we have related to a strategy that really worked for a business that you either experienced or worked in.
Perfect. I've actually got two different stories, and they're on two different sides. One's a enterprise B2B, and one is a B2C. Actually, a very good friend of mine is the head of marketing at an epoxy company, generally local to where I am. And they went from not really anyone knew who they were. Epoxy is a very industry-specific thing until it became more mainstream. And we're talking about, the river tables where you've got two pieces of wood on either side and some really cool-looking, multicolor epoxy or something like that in the middle. What ended up happening in their customer acquisition strategy was they just showed people how to do it. And so you go to their website, there are hundreds of videos with different things. You want to do a waterfall table, you can do it this way. You want to do, redo your countertops, use epoxy this way. You want to make art with it, do it this way. And it's tons of that. And their customer service, so that has driven a lot of leads onto the website. Then they have an option on the website where, and this is kind of going back to where are your customers? This is all on YouTube. People trying to figure out how to do this thing that they saw. It's very expensive. You want to buy a waterfall, black walnut waterfall table or something like that for a conference table, you're looking like 20 grand. And people are like, I can do that. But they also have an amazing team that they built in. So the leads that come in, someone's like, I don't know how much epoxy I need. They'll do the math for you. They will tell you literally to the drop how much you need sometimes. And they went from, again, a relatively unknown company to being one of the major names in the market. In fact, if you look up how to make an epoxy table of any, or how to make an epoxy pretty much anything, it's them. And that has grown into bigger and bigger partnerships. They have some pretty big names that they've done work for now. I don't want to throw out names just in case there's any issues with that, but you can find it very easily if you just look up epoxy. So talking about where are your customers, they figured out that their customers were on YouTube figuring out how to do it because no one knew how to do it. And at one point, epoxy was like, well, let's make sure my boat doesn't leak. And then it turned into art and furniture and things like that. So they found those people and figured out a way to engage them with meaningful, valuable content like we've been talking about. The flip side of it is on the B2B space. I've had personal experience with companies where we are trying to figure out how to get the right leads in front of people. Yep. So do we spend $15,000 and go to an event and get the list of events for, whatever it is, 20,000 attendees or 5,000 attendees, and do we go through that? Or do we go to much more curated events? Again, going back to know where your customers are. And there's a company that we had worked with in the past that we went to, and it was much more expensive. It was about twice as much as we're looking at for doing anything else, but it was where our customers were. So we'd go to events, we'd show up at a booth, have a booth, show up, talk to 500-600 people, speak on stage, all that kind of fun stuff. And it was great. And that still works. Don't get me wrong. And, that costs maybe $15,000 to do that. We spent $30,000 here, and we ended up with 30 qualified meetings, half of which closed. And we were talking about an average order size at this point of about $50,000 to $60,000. So it's two-pronged. I mean, one of it is you're looking at the measurements. You're measuring things. So if someone is telling you you're being measured on leads, obviously the event where you got the 5,000 to 15,000 leads is the appropriate one to go for. But we're actually trying to measure results. And that's where people, I think, from a marketing versus sales space have some questions because most of the time marketing is judged on leads. In the B2B space, I like marketing to be judged on meetings, or at the very least go a little bit beyond what most people look for a marketing qualified lead. Because if I'm showing you leads as the CEO, that is a vanity metric unless I know exactly where they go from lead to meeting to all the way through. If I can show you meetings and I know I closed 2 out of 3 meetings or 1 out of 10 meetings, whatever it is, much more valuable information because you can actually make ROI projections on that.
Yeah, completely agree. Thank you so much, Ben. So, Chris, I'm actually going to move to you for your stories related to strategies, as far as customer acquisition goes.
Sure. And, I'll share a story that we weren't necessarily a part of, but because we're not marketing leaders ourselves, but these are things that our customers go through. So as we think about a lawn tractor organization, one of the things that they were very good at and had a current customer base was selling to their distribution networks. So they, their distributors knew about them, and when they needed their product, they came to them. When companies who had fleets, so think about lawn care companies who have a fleet of equipment, they knew about them and they did very well. Where they weren't succeeding is really with the end user who was looking for a lawnmower or a lawn tractor. And they started to strategize around how can they grow that side of their business. So the first thing was just to look at where their market potential existed, which is something that I think is a key metric in acquisition is your market potential in your true market share growing, and where can you go find some potential if you currently don't have it? And that's the space where they had identified they didn't have it, right? So from there, they started to build out YouTube videos specifically to attract that side where they didn't have customers and customer references today. So asking common questions that somebody might be researching, like when should I have a zero-turn mower? Or, what are the best equipment features on a lawnmower? And starting to do some basic video that would allow them to come up in the feed for customers, those new customers that they were trying to attract. And then, of course, the whole monitoring of the impressions of that, and then the click-through rates to be sure that, in fact, which videos are having the most value, how can they double down on that information, whether that be information that they then translate into things on their website, or do they put that into the e-commerce environment somewhere at the product level to make sure that those types of questions are being answered if somebody is either building their own lawn tractor or considering purchasing a lawn tractor. So that's a really good example, I think, on just the process that companies might go through to identify the market opportunity and then go try to have some wins.
Yeah, amazing. And market research is something Ben likes to talk about. So it's good to hear this from Chris today. Thank you so much, Chris. Kira, I'm actually going to move to you for your story, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So I'll actually extend Chris's story. This is the customer I'm working with right now. They have extended their business from just being a local, very successful power equipment shop to selling parts for that power equipment online. So, set up the website, all that. And now everybody knows that the supply chain is a challenging thing with probably everything. And people cannot even buy the equipment. So we assume that they will fix the equipment. So there is the sky is the limit for what can be done in e-commerce space here in Canada for power equipment parts. And we are leveraging paid search, including weather marketing, not a sophisticated one. So we know how the demand goes with specific tools and their parts accordingly. And Google Trends and Google AdWords give you that predictive analysis. So we get prepared with our creative in advance. We're expanding our Google display network, like banner advertising campaigns, activating the retargeting so that those who didn't buy but have been on the website are seeing more specific ads. And that's very dependent on the weather because that's cross-Canada retailer. And, weather varies across Canada. So we're optimizing Google search towards that. And that has been incredibly successful because there you can measure how much money you put in and how much you get out. And that's wonderful. That's where we focus. Google AdWords, and okay, we'll do some content, but what works, works. And another story that would be a B2C. Actually, that's not on YouTube, that's on Facebook, and that's not about videos, but that's about recipes. I've got another client who is the provider, the distributor of the healthiest quinoa in Canada, and they have been working through tons of local small distributors. But what they found is how much you can write about quinoa, right? What can you tell? But then somehow they got to the conclusion that recipes leveraging quinoa are gaining the most interest. So that's what they started to create, beautiful pictures, like recipes leveraging quinoa, and they're posting that mainly on Facebook. And that's how they went into the B2C space as well. They don't have an e-commerce website, but they did open the Amazon site to distribute that quinoa to B2C. And probably they will open an e-commerce site very soon. So that's listen to the market, do your research, and don't be afraid to make data-driven decisions. If something works, expand it.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Kira, for those stories. So, Steve, I'm actually going to come to you, your stories for strategies.
Okay, well, one of them, I have a client that is in the outdoor industry, and there's sort of two main trade shows you might go to. And one that would be one where you're a manufacturer, you go and all the stores come to that particular area. There's a famous one in Denver that happens, and they come to look at your line and place orders for the next year. But there's other trade shows, especially in the fishing, that hook and bullet area, where they're consumer trade shows. And if you sell something like knives, you might be right next to somebody who's running a lodge in Alaska. Well, so this is a company that the obvious thing that you'd think is you should go to those consumer trade shows and try and sell the heck out of your product. And they were kind of avoiding the other trade shows because they felt like they didn't need them. But then they were also sort of falling flat on their face when it came to those direct-to-consumer sales. They kept coming back from these trade shows saying to themselves, gosh, we only sold X number of product. We barely broke even. I'm not sure it's really working. Well, what was actually happening is they were selling some direct-to-consumer products, but that was the only thing that they were thinking to measure until someone said, hey, wait a second. Every time we go to one of these direct-to-consumer shows, we actually pick up 3 vendors from somewhere in the United States who are retail stores who want to order our stuff. And when they started measuring the right thing, they started realizing that those shows were good for the consumer. But really, that was the place that they were picking up the dealers who were also active participants in those sports. And eventually, all of those dealers there was enough of them that they told them, you need to start going to the other trade shows because we want to actually place our orders at the industry trade shows, not the retail trade shows. So they had to change their metrics for those retail trade shows. At the same time, while they were having this difficulty trying to sell direct to consumer, one enterprising individual in that company started looking around and thinking about infomercials. And I don't think people think about infomercials when it comes to like outdoor goods. Like you're not going to find an infomercial for a Patagonia jacket running at 2 a.m. They did some demographic research and really dove in. They found their audience, which is basically the hardcore hook and bullet crowd, like hunters that go bow hunting and smear themselves with dirt so that elk can't smell them. That's hardcore. They found out that those people like to watch like reruns of football games at 2 a.m. in Alabama, stuff like that. And they actually did like a 30-minute infomercial that played like a television show. And that thing ran for years, and it created their direct consumer channel. That specific activity got them so many direct consumers asking for products in all the places they were now selling at that they drastically increased the number of dealers that they had because the dealers were having people come into their stores saying, do you carry this product? And they said, never heard of it. So as an acquisition strategy, it turned out that these 2 different strategies, which were designed to be direct to consumer, one failed as a direct consumer, one succeeded, but both were wildly successful in creating a dealer network nationwide that basically turned them into the provider for this entire genre of product in the United States.
That's amazing. So, thank you so much, Steve, for that. Before I move to Dave for his stories for strategies, I'm actually going to come back to Ben again. And this time we are going to be working on the improvement stories. Okay, so you had some sort of customer acquisition, but some things were not working, and then somebody did something and something happened. Okay, so we are going to be discussing those stories. But Dave, for you, the strategies, and I don't know if you are going to have stories. Yeah, go for it.
Sure, absolutely. So when we were first talking, when I talked the first time, I was going through kind of the buyer's journey. And so I thought of a great example of a customer that we walked through the buyer's journey and looked at how each of these things go from awareness to consideration to decision, right? So the customer that I'm thinking about was a rental company, and they sold or let people reserve their rental units online. Equipment, party supplies, tents, bulldozers, kind of all of the above, right? So everything that goes into that. So as they went through their buyer's journey, what do you need at each of those stages? So when we worked with them on the awareness part, that's search engine optimization, that's advertising, that's networking, that's going to trade shows, that's everything that's going to help you register in people's minds as a potential opportunity. Next step, consideration. So what do you do when people have found you, but they haven't decided if they're working with you? You need to give them content on the website that is designed to add a little bit more value and give them the next step in the buyer's journey, right? So to get them to that next step. So you're focusing on calls to action, you're focusing on consideration, especially in B2B. On average, there are 80 clicks that any given buyer will make before they contact a business to make a sale. And so filling up that content, making sure that they have all of the specs, all of the details, everything that they need in order to make an informed decision, which leads us then to the decision phase. And that's making your website, your checkout experience, your engagement as clear and as low friction as possible to get them to buy. Right? And then as soon as we buy, then we connect back with the CRM. And in this case, the selling tool was somewhat rudimentary, and we instead just had them fill out a form to request everything that they needed by project, right? So I have a wedding coming up, and so I need a tent, and I need all the tables, and I need all the things, right? So that built in, and then that's informing and filling in the CRM. The sales team is getting that lead, and then as soon as that customer clicks to complete that action, the salesperson is immediately pinged and they can call that content or that contract and answer their questions and say, okay, well, I know that this is a spring wedding. You want to make sure that you're thinking about these 3 things, and they can add additional stuff. But where it really gets magical then is at all of these steps, my CRM, my business process, this is where ERP comes in and all of the other business connections, right?
Yeah.
It's cataloging every page that person has ever visited on my website. So I know that they're really into a specific kind of aesthetic, right? They're young, they're hip, so they want all these cool things. And so my sales team then knows not only that this person wants a wedding, but that they want a hip wedding. They want cool stuff. And it gets them to the next step. And by the way, my management can then track at both levels for marketing and sales if my team is doing their job and coach and say, boy, Mary is absolutely crushing the sales. Every time she picks up the phone, she's landing. What is she doing so that Larry can do better? And so we put it all together into that journey, and we're learning, and we're using our CRM, and we're using our marketing automation to help sell more and to keep people coming back for more.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for that, Dave. So Ben, I'm actually coming to you now for your improvement stories.
All right, so I've got a couple of them again, as usual. I actually want to dovetail on what Dave was just saying, actually, in terms of like identifying what's going on. One of the most dramatic and short time period improvements that I saw with a client was in the bedding industry. And they have a very high quality product. And you go into their showrooms, in their retail locations, everything, it's amazing. You look at it and say, I know where I am. I'm going to be spending money on this. The problem is they're pretty much all their social media was Instagram. And it was, whoever has a phone at the time will shoot a video or take a picture. So there was just a massive difference in what the online audience, which is much easier to get than a in-store walk-in, was seeing, and compared to what the actual product was. So by taking the time, and we just had them completely wipe their Instagram. Everything's gone. Start from scratch, but focus on high-quality stuff consistently. They ended up 3xing their sales, not just their online sales, but their actual sales all across the board, because they had consistency of customer experience. To Dave's point, if you're aware your customer is, and they know what to expect from you, and you're providing that thing, because if you go into a website or an Instagram account, and it's, I mean, no offense against the customer, but it's pretty garbage content, you're expecting a pretty garbage product. They up their content game for very, very cheap. It doesn't take much to figure out how to do that. A couple of apps, a couple of filters, and you're good to go. And maybe an hour course on, Teachable or something. And so they were able to do some incredible results. But there's another one, and this might throw you off a little bit, Sam. I apologize, because I'm going to hand it off to Steve halfway through. Steve and I worked together on a project in a publishing company where we identified, one of the key things is there wasn't really an understanding of what the lifetime value was. So you didn't really know how much you could spend to get a customer. Steve was instrumental in helping identify that and taking the cost of acquisition down from about $122 to in the low 20s by optimizing Google AdWords, optimizing social media, and working together with other elements to optimize social media outreach, other platform spends. Steve, jump in here. I can't remember how long it took us, a couple of months, really. It did not take that long to drop like 80% of the cost of acquisition.
What was great about it, it did take about 2.5, 3 months to implement, but the flipping of the switch, took 14 seconds. And that was that $128 to about $22 switch that Ben's talking about happened at that moment. It wasn't a gradual thing. But we put a lot of thought into who we were targeting and what they would be looking for, and a lot of thought into the congruence of the specific keywords of every ad campaign. We're talking about 126 ad groups and 40,000. That was 40,000 ad groups, 126 campaigns. So it was a very large, massive catalog. But dropping it that much allowed us to actually do some math. The other number was so big that you couldn't even really envision what your return on investment was in a number of days. After about 6 months of running this and gaining some cohort information, so we were measuring all the people that came in 1 month and then how many people stuck around each month after that, we knew that there was a pretty steady maintenance of a certain percentage of those people that came in each month were still there 6 months later, and that they would likely be there 6 months from then. So they were really long-term return customers. And even with that the initial spend and a huge drop off in long-term customers, the return on investment was 56 days. So I love that number because if you went to GM or Cisco or SAP and said you could put any number dollar amount in there and say your ROI will be 1 year and it would cost you $100 million, they would slap $100 million on the table so fast that you wouldn't be able to blink. So 56 days was pretty awesome.
So just to recap on that, so just want to make sure that the story is clear. So the magic that happened is because of the retargeting of the customers who were already there on your site. What was the reason why the customer acquisition cost came down?
Because the targeting actually happened.
Yeah.
There was the previous marketing director that preceded Ben had hired some folks, and they were just doing some blanket marketing campaigns. They got sort of sucked into the vortex of a big reputable company in the Midwest that did ad campaigns, and they didn't really. That company saw dollar signs. They didn't see an opportunity to make the company that was hiring them be better. And that's one of those tragedies that happens. But when we were there, Ben clearly had a strategy in place that he wanted to accomplish, and we helped him with the architecture and the technology side, so that when we actually did the targeting, in this case, a lot of it was AdWords. So the answer to your question is we were paying for these people who'd never heard of us, but we were also converting at a very high level because the targeting was very, very good.
Yeah. And then to add on to that, we were making sure that the right people were seeing the right ads. If I'm in for romance and Steve is serving me an ad for sci-fi, it's really not going to hold. I'm not going to care. So we're able to take that information and use that across the corporation, across the industry, or across the company, based off of the back of that targeting.
And another example of why that targeting mattered is that, for example, we had a campaign ad group that was targeting jazz audiobooks, but it turned out that the J campaign was sort of off the charts in terms of expense after like 10 days. It was really easy for us to go in and say, oh, everybody that's looking for generic jazz albums, we're getting those folks. And we adjusted that campaign and immediately dropped the cost per acquisition. So the architecture had a lot to do with being able to get to that number because we could see where our sort of generic architectural approach to the entire campaign if something went wrong, meaning we had overspend, we could see it right away and dive into it and fix it within a day. So that helped a lot too.
Okay, amazing. Ben, I don't know if you have anything else to add. Otherwise, I'm actually going to move to Chris.
I mean, I can talk for hours, but I feel like it's probably better to just move on to Chris.
Okay, Chris, your stories for improvement, please.
All right. Well, this is a very switch of direction here, but the best story that came to mind is something that happened last year during COVID. We work with a company that manufactures machines that produce fabric for furniture and clothing, okay? And many manufacturers, particularly of clothing, so these products cut the clothing in a high fashion, a high speed, high production fashion. But if you weren't selling athleisure wear last year, you really weren't selling a lot of clothing during COVID. So the production of their machines was down, their own parts ordering was down. So they went after the approach of helping to solve a problem for their customers because their customers weren't selling things. And what they did is they changed their software in their program to help their customers produce masks, okay? And by producing masks, they could help their customers meet a demand and sell something new that their customers hadn't been selling. And what was interesting is that these providers of these clothing that sent it to large distribution channels, they didn't have e-commerce sites. So our customer who had an e-commerce site said, you produce the masks and we'll help you sell the masks on our e-commerce site. So it opened up the manufacturer that we were working with to a new market because they marketed the masks since they had a somewhat limited supply as compared to other industries and what they were producing. They just were taking their customers' masks that were being produced, sold them on their platform, their e-commerce platform, and they got a new customer base by doing that because they promoted it to the industry. So the industry that needed the masks for their own businesses gave them an opportunity to demonstrate how they were helping their existing clients, and that would draw them in to want to do business with them. So this funnel of really looking at a problem. It was their customer problem. It happened to be our manufacturing partner's problem. Solving the problem gave them an opportunity to sell more and sell into a new market of customers who weren't currently doing business with them. So sometimes solving a problem and then talking about the problem that you're solving, explaining how you're doing it, and really not talking about the sales, but talking about the solving of the problem is what leads to customers' trust, your own credibility, and then them coming back for more. So that's a recent story from last year with one of ours.
Completely agree. That's the best way to do it, to be honest. So thank you so much for that. Kira, I'm actually going to come back to you for your story for improvement.
Yeah, so I'll give also maybe a change of direction where people did not invest additional dollar in marketing, but they just fixed the funnel. So they've talked about the consideration funnel, and this is just taking current marketing approach, current sales approach, and automating that. So this is a company that sells and installs equipment for gardens, and they have multiple suppliers. So their expertise is to find the right customers and to fit the equipment for them. So what we have done for them is actually converting paper-based pricing into online pricing tool. It's not super accurate and it doesn't give the final amount to the end user. But what happens is people fill in specific parameters and they fill in the specific needs. And the salesperson, as one of the presenters also mentioned, they get that as the lead. So they can just press a button, check that the pricing looks okay, and get back to the inquiring person in a matter of maybe an hour or something like that, while before it was taking days and days and days and days, and the founders had to check each and every proposal. And these are big numbers. So it's not a simple change, and that's not a marketing investment. It's process optimization investment, but this is something that really helps to maximize the effort and the budget that has been already invested. So I love that story because it's not always necessarily linked to marketing and sales.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Kira. So I'm actually going to come to Dave now because Steve has already spoken in this segment. So Dave, what would be your story for improvement?
Yeah, the fun part about improvement is that there are so many options once you really start paying attention. The common theme that we've all brought up is we needed to listen to our customers and look at what the data and the information was telling us in order to make a real decision and help our customers pivot. So, for us, it could be as simple as using a tool like Google Trends. It's at g.co/trends, and you can identify where the interest is going on particular keywords or phrases, right, to kind of gather interest. And so I love doing this. I'll just put in, you could do ERP versus solution management, or product lifecycle management is what popped up automatically as I was popping in just ERP for a high level keyword.
Yeah.
So what are people thinking about? What are people doing? Yeah. It could be as simple as a pizza place looking and saying, okay, well, I want healthy, so I'm going to do pineapple, but it seems like anchovies are really hot right now. And so they're going to provide that extra layer. For us, for a client of ours, they're a manufacturer and they saw a big slowdown in production of CO2 cleaning products, like dry cleaning products. And they specifically have a cleaning device that lets them clean anything. A lot less manufacturing in their particular sector, so they were seeing a drop off. Well, they pivoted into using their tools to dry clean effectively personal protection equipment, PPE, where you could just put it in this tool and essentially dry clean it to remove all of the impurities so that it's good as new. And then after that slowed down, they pivoted into firefighting equipment. When you're a firefighter, you go into a house, you go into something, and you're completely covered in terrible, awful, cancer-causing chemicals. You need to clean all of that stuff out. So we were watching what people were using their product for and where they were raising their hands. And they had this one spike with firefighting equipment. And so they pivoted all the way in on that. And then we used the keywords and the phrasing that they were using in order to get into, again, that buyer's life cycle. And we're able to target exactly those people. And one thing that I'm sure Ben and Steve were doing when they were modifying and targeting the people they were doing is they were adding exclusions. They were adding negative keywords to what they were doing. Because if you're getting tons of traffic just on brand searches, if they know you and they're searching for you, there's no reason to pay for that traffic. But if you're finding that people are searching for something, and again, they talked about this, it was a completely different product or a different fit. If you negative out that, if you just say minus and then whatever that bugger keyword is, you can get rid of all of the crud and all of a sudden you're targeting exactly the right people again. And so look at your numbers and don't be afraid to pivot based on what the data and your customers are telling you.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Dave, for that. So the only thing we can take right now is going to be the closing advice. So Ben, what would be your closing advice as far as customer acquisition goes?
Figure out who you're going for, figuring out why they care about your product, and then figure out where they are.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Ben, for that. Chris, what would be your closing advice?
I think new customer acquisition is probably one of the hardest things that companies face. I would just repeat, ask your recent customers how they came to know you. But I would also say do some research on your lost customers, re-engage with your lost customers because there can be some great insights and it might be easier to win them back than going after new customer acquisition. So I'd just add those.
I completely agree with those two strategies. Both of them are going to be equally relevant, especially if you are talking about the new customer acquisition. I don't know how many people really track or ask all the customers that come to. It's not easy, but if you can do it, that's going to be the real goal. So, Kira, what is going to be your closing advice for today as far as customer acquisition goes?
I think I'd say be open to testing and experimenting, because we just heard about multiple examples when people tried something new. Yes, they spent the money, but maybe they failed fast or maybe that worked out. So be open, watch your competition, and if it feels and smells and looks something that might be a fit, maybe it's a fit.
Yeah, I completely agree with your assessment there. Thank you so much, Kira, for that. Steve, what is going to be your closing advice as far as customer acquisition goes?
I think don't freak out is the advice. And don't try and do something that's super big. The project that Ben and I worked on is a huge anomaly in that because we had a very direct, vision and architecture. But what you should be looking at, assuming you have one in place, like a customer journey in place, look at all the tiny pivot points inside there, whether it's page speed or reducing the complications of a particular form or making your checkout one page. Each one of those little things, focus on one of those, have an expert focus on it. Because as I pointed out, if you do a 1% increase in any one of those places along that funnel and 10 times, you actually get about 11.6% increase in sales, right? So those little incremental things are actually where the power is, because there's a lot of them. If you think you're just going to make one big change in your funnel and everything's going to be magic, that never happens.
Yeah, small changes. I completely agree that incremental approach is what pays off, especially in marketing. So thank you so much, Steve, for that. Dave, what is going to be your closing advice? And you can probably have mini speech because we have 2 minutes right now. So go for it, brother.
All right, perfect. Well, let me wind up, Sam. Thank you. This is such a fun conversation because there's so many basics and fundamentals that we talked about today, but it's really hard to package all of this into something that's replicatable and that you can trust. And that's where working with a trusted partner can absolutely help guide you. And frankly, especially in the marketing world, we have a lot of people that like to go for a flash in the pan or just try to hit something. Ben and Steve saved their client from a massive oops because somebody went for the quick win and just loaded a bunch of crap words in keywords on an ad campaign, right? So if you make your customer the hero inside of the conversation, you say, how can I make this person look awesome to their spouse, to their boss, to themselves after they've chosen to buy from us, and what needs to go into that at every stage of my buyer's journey, my awareness, how can they find me as quickly as possible, my consideration, how can I make them comfortable with choosing me, and my decision, how can I make it as easy as possible for them to make the right call and work with me and then come on back. And then I really love what Chris mentioned as well. A lot of times we completely forget about our existing customers. It's 10 times easier to make an additional sale with an existing customer than it is to find a brand new one. So yes, we need to focus on customer acquisition, but don't forget about the pile of gold that you have sitting in your back pocket, and keep coming back to that and just focus on little incremental improvements, measure what you're doing, and keep getting better. Thanks, Sam.
Okay, make your customer hero. Could not agree more. Thank you so much, Dave, for that. Guys, that's it for today. On that note, I really want to thank everybody for your time and insight.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, everybody.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about Steve Rice, head over to .comjungle.com. It's .comjungle.com. If you want to learn more about Dave Meyer, head over to buzzyweb.com. It's BIZZYWEB.com. If you want to learn more about Kira Chernikowski, head over to customerization.ca. It's CUSTOMERIZATION.ca. If you want to learn more about Ben Searcy, head over to govi.io. It's GOVI.io. If you want to learn more about Chris Harrington, head over to genalpha.com. It's GENALPHA.com. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. If anything in this podcast resonated with you and your business, you might want to check other related episodes, including the interview with Paul Benengeri, who shares his insights into the nuances of nano-influencer marketing. Also, the interview with Steve Rice, who discusses why congruence is the most important factor to optimize product category architecture, navigation, user experience, customer journeys, and campaign design. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to catch you on the next episode of the WBS Podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.